welcome to another episode of War Hero to Superhero, helping military veterans and first responders transform their lives from the prayer room to the boardroom. We are in the superhero battle room with Ritchie Thomas. He is a man who served his country and now empowers soldiers through coaching. Don't automatically assume he's from the Army because coaches can coach any branch. So your job is to guess as he's going over and speaking. And just a friendly reminder, we got a little news set up. Halfway through, we go through sponsor time. So if you are wanting to get your brand across YouTube and the rest of the planet at least 2 to 8 times a month, we sell ads super cheap. If you can afford a cup of coffee, you can afford an ad. It's that cheap until fall officially hits. So September 21st, we raise our rates. So get it before you have to pay for 2 cups of coffee. So we're just going to get back into the mission of bringing Ritchie forward, and he's going to tell us about himself and more. Hey, Ritchie, do I have you?
Yes, sir. What's going on? Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Again, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to be on your platform today. Thank you, man.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it's the afternoon, so it must be really early where you're calling from.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's cool. But I also, I got to keep into consideration when people are going to be viewing it. So I like to do the Truman Show. Good afternoon, good evening, and good night, just in case I don't see you again, a la Jim Carrey. So,
and that could be a whole podcast in itself. But let's get back to you about what inspired you to serve and join the military compared to becoming Jim Carrey.
Yeah. Well, fortunate enough for me, sir, I came from a military family. My father and mother were both military, and both my grandfathers were. So I was kind of third generation military. And they told me this goes back to 2001, 90 days before 9/11. Someone said, hey, you can go to college, or you can read about the world, or you can go see the world firsthand. So I said I wanted to go see and touch and explore. And they told me I could go to 20 or 30 countries, and I'd rather go see them versus read about them. So when I had the opportunity to go join the military, Daniel, I jumped because I wanted to travel. And so that's why I joined, and seeing, again, what a lot of my family had went through. I was just really inspired by the opportunity of putting on the uniform, putting on the dog tags, kind of felt like I was in the Justice League, if you will. So that's what inspired me to join. I just was kind of burned out with college. It wasn't for me at the time. I don't know if it was a maturity thing. I was just honestly just kind of burnt out of the classroom. But I think, especially I'm a little bit older. I'm 41. I guess that's old in today's world. But I remember in that first Gulf War, I remember seeing the 4-star General Colin Powell and whatnot on the news, and he looked like a superhero to me. And I remember everybody like that. It was very, very much patriotic back then. Everybody was very much united in one front. So being part of the military to me, Daniel, was an incredible opportunity to be a part of something that was bigger than myself. So that's why I joined the military.
Well, I'm a tad older than you, so I was there during that time too. So I remember those days and everything else. I didn't have the family that was in the military. My uncle, like great uncle, was in the war. He told me he got a Purple Heart by getting bombed while he was on the John. Those are the stories that I heard. And then when I signed up for girls. I didn't sign up for heritage. I didn't sign up for education. I signed up for a girl, and I never even dated the girl. And then I found my wife many years later. So it wasn't even her. So that's the sadness. So yours is way more inspiring than mine. So roughly 2001, you came in, 9/11 time frame, right before. When did you leave the military, and how long were you in?
Yeah, so I got out in 2007, and it was February 2007. So from 2001, literally 10 days after high school, I think it was June 2001, all the way to February 2007. And as I said, I joined like 90 days before 9/11, and 9 months after 9/11, Daniel, my butt was in Afghanistan. So I feel like the military sent an 18-year-old boy into a man's war. And that's when I kind of got exposed to the lifestyle and the pain points of a soldier, putting a rucksack on. I was airborne, paratrooper. So I got to jump out of 29 airplanes while I was in. And I was fortunate enough to be stationed up at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and did some time there. And then I went to Afghanistan, like I said, 9 months after 9/11. But then I came back, Daniel, from Afghanistan. I got fortunate enough to sent to Puerto Rico with an awesome unit, Southcom. It was stationed in Puerto Rico. We were kind of the last military base there, stationed at Ceiba and Fajardo. It was a naval station, Roosevelt Roads, and this was 2003, 2004 timeframe. So being in Puerto Rico was kind of dope because it was a joint unit. So I got to train with SEALs, there was special forces. It was kind of like, again, it was Southcom, so Special Ops Command South. So it was really, I was one of the few people there who weren't special forces or ranger or whatnot. So it was really, really awesome experience. But it was cool to me because I was a young IT guy. So they had me, it felt like I was in Call of Duty. I was just the guy on the radio comms. And so, but being there in Puerto Rico was really the highlight of my military career because I got to train again with these guys and to see how they prepare mentally, emotionally, and even spiritually. They just had a different level to them. So when I was there for the remaining 4 years, it was a total of 6 years. And as I transitioned out, Daniel, I went from the active duty army into the army of the unemployed. And that's when my life changed after I transitioned out in 2007, because I walked right into the Great Recession, which absolutely changed my life. So that's my quick and dirty.
Wow. So you walked into one world that changed us forever. And then
Right.
you walked into another civilian world that changed us forever. I
Yes, sir.
was in during that time
Right.
and I saw some of the effects, but when you're like, oh, the check might get shut off and we might not get paid and we're working whatnot, the government overall, unless you're a contractor, they still pay you. They figure out a way. They give you the freak out story, but you're usually not on the
Right.
I'm really not getting paid, right? They're like,
Right.
no, serious, you're not getting paid. So you left during that point. Wow. So that must have been really difficult. So how was that transition?
It was a nightmare. Again, going from active duty army to the army of unemployed was literally it was a beautiful nightmare. I remember I checked out. I got that infamous DD 214 down in Fort McNeil, Tampa, and I got even to the parking lot, Daniel, and took my top off and my boots, and I was done. Two fingers. I couldn't wait to head home to now Atlanta, but I realized halfway down. I do not know what I'm going to do for employment, but being 25, Daniel, man, is like the best and worst time of your life because it's like everything and nothing at the exact same time. And my whole life changed in the next 6 months because, again, going from the active duty army to the army of the unemployed was a nightmare. And so I got kind of exposed to a different set of problems because I realized we were trained for the combat battlefield, but we were not trained for the economic battlefield. And so during my time out, I went door to door, went to Burlington Coat Factory, got the cheapest suit on the rack, and was literally going door to door to AT&T, any businesses there on Cobb Parkway in Atlanta, looking for employment, begging people to hire me. In 2007, I eventually got a job with AT&T, but Daniel, it took 10 months for me from application to start date. I think I applied January, February, 2007, and I don't think I started until like early January 2008. And by 2008, the recession started and I got laid off. And little did I know, I'm thinking it was a couple weeks, and it turned into a year and a half. Daniel, I was unemployed for a year and a half. And that's when I realized that there were 5 big issues in the veteran community. Unemployment was number 1, 2, and 3. Homelessness is number 2. Mental illness, because I'm depressed, sad, and whatnot. They say half the country suffers from depression and the other half suffers from anxiety. So we have a fear of the past and a fear of the future. And as you probably know, 22 veterans a day commit suicide, which kind of makes sense. It's like we lose our jobs, then we lose our homes, we lose our mind, and it's like, well, then we lose the will to live. And then the other 2 issues is physical injury and lack of education. So when I transitioned out in those first 2 or 3 years, Daniel, I went on to check 4 of the 5 issues that veterans go through. And at the time, I felt like I was in Jumanji. I'm like, why me? Why is this happening to me? And then I realized in my journey, sometimes we get exposed to something because we're meant to do something about it. And so I got exposed to like the economic battlefield. And I feel like we are prepared for the combat battlefield, but not the economic battlefield. So I had to mentally transition from from a soldier's mindset to a business professional's mindset. And so that was my big kind of a bigger battle, just as big as fighting in Afghanistan for survival, literally survival, but now I'm fighting for economic survival here 2008, because the recession really was like a full 3 years. Unofficially it was 2007, but the government and the news, they didn't like to use the term recession all over the news, because recession, when they start using those words, it's panic words. And so they didn't officially recognize it. Had I known, but even if they did say it was a recession, I was 25, Daniel. I didn't know what a recession was. Again, I'm 25 years old. I'm running down Ardennes. I'm jumping out of airplanes. I was stationed in Puerto Rico. I wasn't thinking about the economy. Like I said, I ran to the military to kind of see the world. But again, when I was trained for combat and not commerce, it kind of bit me in the butt. And so going through 2008, 2009, I had to mentally transition from soldier's mindset to a business professional's mindset. And that was, again, a mentally, emotionally, and spiritually just as big a fight as Afghanistan. So I don't know how it was for you, but it was, I think the mental transition, Daniel, absolutely was the hardest part for me, hands down.
Yeah, and that was a beautiful analogy that we talk about, that your hand basically formed what our veterans typically do, and specifically males. We won't go too much in detail because we don't want to get shadow banned,
Yeah.
but it's literally your hand transforms from a tool to something worse.
Right.
And that's the thing. If you have 4 out of the 5, the only thing that's preventing you is the opposable thumb, and that was it.
Right.
Because why can't cats attack us? Because they don't have opposable thumbs. So we attack ourselves instead, in a sense.
Right.
And I thought that was a beautiful analogy. It doesn't mean all 5 is going to take us out,
Right.
but now those things can equip us, in a sense, in a negative way, of taking ourselves out. And they're, even though they're long problems, they're temporary problems. And before we get into the pivot on how you meant that transformation, we're going to go to our sponsors for a minute.
Absolutely.
You have served. No matter if it was in the military or civilian service, you deserve to live good. Live good in health. Live good in wealth. Live good in so much more. At Live Good, the global wholesale buyer club, we empower you to take your mission to the next level. Are you ready to live good? We all struggle in life. No matter the barriers, we do not need to stay there. Each day is an opportunity to step into better health. Each day is an opportunity to step into wealth. Each day is an opportunity to step into dreams. Live Good, the global wholesale buyers club, empowers all these steps and more. Ready to be empowered? Grab the link to learn more.
All right, we are back with Ritchie, and our sponsors are over, and we're bringing back Ritchie in his pivot time, because our sponsors help you pivot in the sense of health and wellness. But Ritchie was pivoting from everything, and almost his whole hand was full of the weight of life. So we're going to go into the next question. Like, what made you pivot to serve your current community? Because you're now taking your hand and you're trying to go over and to get out of these situations and everything else, but helping others. A lot of times we just try to get ourselves and pull ourselves by our bootstraps. Why did you go over and try to grab other bootstraps to help others?
I think the story actually starts, Daniel. I got to take you back to Charleston, South Carolina, from the beautiful, beautiful city of Charleston, South Carolina. Drayton Hall, I'm going to date myself, 1996. I was voted a peer mediator, which is still hilarious because I always instigated fights. But they said, hey, we want you to kind of be the hall monitor, if you will, on steroids. And so I've always been a natural coach from that aspect. But in 2000, I think it was 2019, I got an email on LinkedIn. I live on LinkedIn, by the way. And I didn't even acknowledge it for about 2 or 3 weeks. I thought it was a spam sales call. And Daniel, it turns out it was a gentleman by the name of George Anders, who is the editor at large of LinkedIn. It was like the number 2 at LinkedIn. And he said, hey, Ritchie, we've done this whole survey of everybody and kind of filtered out from a data analytics standpoint. We would like to feature you in an article about military transition. And I was just like, what in the world? I thought it was fake. So I didn't even respond for a couple of weeks. And I realized he was the real deal. So this article comes out in 2019. It actually hits Veterans Day 2019. And Daniel, the article goes viral. It's featured on like MSN and whatnot. But literally my DMs were just kind of blowed up on LinkedIn, and people were saying, hey, can you help me? Can you coach me? And I was really, really confused by that, because at the time I was an IT director for a nonprofit. I wasn't a coach. And so I just thought it was so bizarre. But I had an awesome, awesome coach by the name of Cantor Simmons has been my coach forever. Love him to death. He said, "Hey, dummy, the market just chose you. You need to do something with this." And I was really torn because I had, kind of rebranded and retooled as this. I try to fancy myself as an up and coming CIO in technology, and so now I'm being pulled about as a coach for veterans. And so I had completely scrubbed the camouflage off of my resume, off of my LinkedIn. And I kind of started carrying myself as a business professional versus a soldier. And so this was a very interesting response. And the people was literally like supply and demand. And so I had this opportunity to join a phenomenal speakers program. And they said, "Hey, you should kind of cultivate this message and really embrace it because everyone has veterans in their family." And that's the one thing. I think there's actually three things, Daniel, that Americans can agree on. I think we all love football, tacos, and we all love a veteran. So I was really intrigued by this whole idea of helping veterans because, in a sense, I was kind of saw myself in them. I took me back to 2007 when I transitioned out. And I realized, again, soldiers were trained for the combat battlefield, but we weren't trained for the economic battlefield. And a lot of these workshops and seminars that we sign up for, they'll teach you how to build a resume and they'll teach you how to interview, but no one teaches us how to build a life. And so I was really, really inspired by that because I'm really big on chasing fulfillment versus chasing finances. And so the whole idea of starting a coaching program, it just really pulled at my heartstrings, Daniel. So that was the truth. The article came out in 2019. And ever since then, I just really kind of hyper studied into this world of as a speaker, as a coach, but also digital marketing. We're a phenomenal platform that you've created. We could potentially be on 100 different websites at the same time, understanding the algorithms and YouTube and Facebook and Instagram. And it was like, well, I wanted to be able to teach and coach, but what's the marketing strategy to reach the 200,000 veterans who transition out? But to be able to kind of live the whole concept of lift as you climb was really inspiring to me. I wasn't really, the closer I got to the C-suite, Daniel, I realized that it just wasn't as enticing as it was to help a fellow vet. I didn't see, it didn't matter if they're male, woman, whatnot. It was just, I wanted to help a fellow soldier. It was just really, really cool to me to kind of be in that circle because I saw myself in them. And I remember being unemployed for a year and a half. And I remember going from military to minimum wage. And so I just wanted to help the next man or next woman up. And that was just really, really inspiring to me. So that article completely changed me in every way because it gave me an opportunity to kind of test the market. And so the feedback from people was just so powerful. It was just too big to ignore. And so it's kind of, as they say, when you know, you know. And so that's what happened. Again, just being able to be a little bit of taste of coaching on that magnitude, it was just too much to turn down. And I'd rather chase that than to chase the C-suite. So that's the quick and dirty, if you will.
Yeah, you must have been cultivated a long time in a sense. It sounds like God has imbued you. Everything you speak and you teach and you tie it into story and teach and everything else. You're like the Dean Gracio, Tony Robbins of military right now as I'm listening, because I'm like, you're hitting all those points. We're going to go viral just because of the way you speak, because I think it is that point. It was like me almost going homeless. And then 5 years later, it was when I broke my back. And these guys said, get out of your job, get on the military, get a $10 to $15 job and take care of your family. And the only thing that prevented me from getting up was my back being broken. And I am not going to go give up on the vets. And then the first responders came out of me becoming a first responder the first time. So it was like your audience went over and speak. I had an audience that came to my bed and telling me what I shouldn't do. And you had an audience coming to you what you ought to do. Right. And that's really cool on that transformation. Man, 2019, you must have, right when MIC started, the Military Influencer Conference started around 1819. So
my man,
definitely. So,
and I gotta say, I turned into a huge 2008, 2009. I turned into a huge professional development junkie. I started going to seminars and workshops, and I've seen Tony Robbins 3 times. Les Brown, Jim Rohn, Eric Thomas, these are my heroes. And so I got to a point, I was like, man, I could listen to professional development all day, every day. And I literally did. Like the whole point was like, I changed my mindset by changing what I listened to. No more music, no more TV. Daniel, America's a funny place to me because we're always obsessed with the look and the feel, Atkins diet, South Beach diet, these different diets. But well, we never go on a mental diet. And so those 2008, 2009, when I was really at my low point, I went on a mental diet, spiritual diet. So it was like no negativity was allowed in my mind, body, or soul. And YouTube started popping up around this time for like motivational stuff. And I started, the algorithm was early on in the game, and I got exposed to Les Brown. And I listened to Les Brown and Eric Thomas for 2 years straight. And then the algorithm was doing its thing, and then it kept pumping this guy named Tony Robbins. And I was like, that's the guy from Shallow Hal, Banana Hands. And so getting exposed to Tony Robbins was absolutely life-changing. So if you ever get the chance to see him in person, he is probably the greatest speaker to ever take the stage. I actually saw him last summer in London. I was just so inspired by him. But yeah, professional development is all about just changing your mindset, your heart set, and really your soul set. So I like to share a lot of that message with the veteran community. Yeah, but that's the ultimate compliment. I appreciate that, sir.
Wow, seen him 3 times. I've only been live on his like videos and whatnot. I signed up for Mastermind for a bit, and then my master checking account decided to say no, so I had to stop for a bit. And that I'm hoping to get back involved in that game again. So you made the pivot to go over to serve. I'm an outpouring going viral on LinkedIn, which is super impressive because LinkedIn is hard to get viral on. So what about the tough time? So you had the tough time with almost, being jobless, year and a half and everything else, going from gigs, probably living on couches and different things and whatnot. But we don't run out of tough times until we're dead. The tough times still come. People that are rich, people that are poor, we always tend to forget. It's like, hey, if we see them on the Joneses and on the Facebook, they're ballers. I'm like, I'm not a baller. I'm a micro influencer with nickels in my pocket. I literally got paid from Facebook a couple bucks last month. And I mean, literally a couple bucks. And so what happens when we're grinding it out? We're trying to serve our community. What is your secret fuel when those pressure and tough times come? Because it could be today and we don't even know.
Again, I think it's what fuels you. I just love coaching people. And I knew I was really inspired by that. About 6 or 7 years ago, right before the whole veteran article hit, a young lady paid me. Her name was Regina Shirley. She gave me $50 for my first coaching session. And I had put together like a book cover for her, kind of for her women's and kind of executive ladies group. And I saw the book cover for her, and that $50 felt like 50 million. And to see somebody else's dream, to help somebody build their dream, meant more to me than to build my dream. And so it was past the point of finances. And so I'm all about purpose and not profit. And you couldn't put a price tag on your heartbeat when you see something like that. And so what inspires me is just helping people kind of step into who they're called to be. And so it's just so hard to put a price tag on it. And in America today, it's a really weird time to live in this country, because it's like we kind of like a beautiful nightmare, man. It's like the politics is just so much infighting, and it kind of feels like nothing is sacred because everything is for sale. And so once you find what really kind of pulls you and pushes your heart, it's just, you can't put a price tag on that. And so to me, again, just kind of helping people craft their blueprint to their blessing is just beyond priceless. And that's what pushes me through the hard times, is helping somebody up when they're down.
Yeah. What we go over and say at Learn and Live is like, doesn't matter if I'm a dollaire or a billionaire, I'm going to go over and serve. Right. One of the things that really shaped me, and I'm not trying to get political, but it was the Republican National Convention a couple times ago, aging ourselves when we were younger and more youthful and beautiful, and we didn't need makeup and all jazz. Anyway, so it was I won't even say the name or the gender. Anyway, it was someone on the Republican National Convention. They said, when I become president, then I will bring this solution to cut down veterans, unalives by half. And my mind came over and said, why would you wait if you have a solution that could cut down it by half? Why
Right.
do you need to be in a specific position? You might not be able to have as much influence
Right.
because of the lower name, but you still should be going over and pressing towards that. If God has gifted you something that allows people to live in the right timing and then them taking themselves out of the short end timing, why would you go and do that? So that's why we always say from dollionaire to billionaire, we're going to go and serve. It's just how many and what's the impact. But one is just as most important than a million. So,
Absolutely.
and I think that's key. And I think that's a fuel that we both have. And we know our identities. I think
Right.
that's one of the biggest things too, is that I discuss this, my wife discusses with my coworkers. I'm like, if you don't know your identity, when those trials come up, you're just going to get swayed. When social media goes tells you, or the checking account goes, because you go over and when it's big, you're like, yeah, I'm secure. When it's low, you're insecure. I think
Right.
that's one of the hardest things for us as veterans. Like you said, the hand just starts shaping. So I thought that was beautiful in there. Now, speaking of beautiful things, if you're with one of your clients or your past self, what 3 tips would you give to go from that survival mindset, which we're all pretty much in, to go from a thriving mindset, which the minority population isn't? So, how do we go over and break that to go get from surviving to thriving?
I think the main thing to change your mindset is you gotta change your elevation. And so, I think a lot of times we are seeking opportunities, and it's like help, you know, looking for a job, looking for a job, looking for a job. And the thing that hit me the hardest, Daniel, was like, instead of looking for the job, why don't you create it? And so I always tell veterans, anybody leaving corporate America, it's like, why don't you create a business in your name? John Doe LLC, Ritchie Thomas. I got a Ritchie Thomas LLC. And the reason I tell people to do that, I want you to start seeing yourself and selling yourself and branding yourself to the marketplace as the CEO of your career. Because you are one, and stop selling soldier, because soldiers don't get hired, business professionals do. But if you walk into the room like you're the CEO of you LLC, that changes the entire game, because now we've changed your mindset, because we've changed your vision by changing your elevation of who you are and how you carry yourself. So I always tell people, first thing is you LLC. I want everybody who, before they transition out of the military, I want them to create a business in their name, some type of ownership, some type of equity, because it's a pride thing. So the first thing to me is a you LLC, because I want you to carry yourself like the soldier, the CEO that you really are. That's absolutely the first and second. I think the second thing too is understanding that, I love soldiers and love Marines, all branches, right? Because we are always like putting the country before ourselves. And I think that's incredible, because you're always worried about the next man or next woman, versus going there chasing the dollar on Wall Street. And so, but what I don't like is we kind of drop those standards when we transition out. So it's like, instead of, I want you to be the hero of your own story, just like you were the hero for your country. And that's the second thing. It's like just having some pride and standards, and keeping those same pride and standards after you transition out of the military, I think is absolutely gold. So you LLC is number one. Be the hero of your own story is number two. And I want you, the third thing I want is that powerful mindset to me is, I want you, the coolest thing, Daniel, about veterans is they love their country, left or right, politics aside, they love their country. And the problem I have is sometimes, like, but you would never hurt your country. You would never, if your country was a person, if it was a girl, young girl, you would never hurt her or harm her. But a lot of times they'll hurt or harm themselves. And so I want them to all love themselves as much as they love their country. So I really want you to kind of see yourself and sell yourself and brand yourself to the marketplace as the hero of your own story, because you are. So those are my 3 superhero tactics, Daniel.
No, and I think those are beautiful. And I think there is even some humility in that, because you're taking what God has blessed and gifted you with, and you're making yourself unique, which goes over and reinforces that identity. But at the same time, you're now allowed to become a hero of yourself. So you're not living in despair, but
Right.
then you're able to help and to empower, because again, as you lost those things were forming. And when you gain those things, now you have open hands to give.
Mhm.
So you can still give even if you have a penny. You can give the 2 copper coins, just like the woman did in the scriptures. You can
Right.
give everything, but how much more can you go over and give? It was never the 2 copper coins that the lady gave. It was her heart in there. So if those Pharisees and Sadducees gave the same, they would have gave everything. And that's what we get an opportunity as we elevate ourselves, we can give it even more. And then if we our hands open, we can steward more. So I thought that was beautiful in that particular regard. So yes, this has been a beautiful conversation from stem to stern. Love that you came on and everything else. And now we're going to give the last bit of the floor is yours to go over and talk about what your program goes over entails, and if you have any last quotes to close out the show, and then we're going to go to cred. So thank you for going over and joining us.
My man, thank you so much, Daniel, for the opportunity. Again, I'm really, really proud of you and the platform you've built. It means a lot. So yeah, I decided, Daniel, to kind of empty out my 401k 6 months ago. It was a true story. And I decided, you know what? I can't fight the market, so just meet them where they are. We all live and breathe on our cell phones. You can't fight Instagram. You can't fight Facebook. So I wanted to kind of, again, to meet folks where they are. So I decided to create a Military Transition University is the premier digital online coaching app for transitioning veterans, Military Transition University. So as of today, right now, live on the iTunes store, it is available for download as the free coaching app. And so what we do is we have 5 courses available. And it's really my steps of what I went through. So I kind of decompressed decades into days through these coaching programs. So the course is there. So the first one is your final marching orders. It's a 10-part video series of kind of, again, mentally transitioning folks from how they see themselves as soldier to CEO. Because I don't really want you to work on your resume, because you get your resume and you submit it to a business, but no one teaches you what a business is. And so the second course there is a 6-figure soldier academy. And what it is kind of, again, mentally transition folks from how they see themselves and sell themselves and brand themselves. And I want them to kind of position themselves for the C-suite, prepare, not just find the job, but look for the job at the top level. And so the third course there is, again, as I mentioned earlier, Daniel, I live on LinkedIn because in 2008, 2009, I was on LinkedIn every day looking for jobs. So I probably put over 1,000 hours into my LinkedIn profile. And so I taught people how to do the same through the course there. So I call it the 100K LinkedIn strategy. This is a humble brag, but I get offers once a month from recruiters in IT because of my LinkedIn profile. And I started teaching other people how to do the same. And so people were like, hey, you should definitely make that a course, the 100K LinkedIn strategy. And then the other piece, Daniel, is it's called basic business training, because again, soldiers were trained for the combat battlefield, but we were not trained for the economic battlefield. So I wanted to teach soldiers the basic of business so they can win the war on unemployment, because again, we were trained for combat, not commerce. So those are the 5 courses there: your final marching orders, 6-figure soldier, the 100K LinkedIn strategy, and basic business training. And there's a bonus course in there as well. And those are free. And that's what I'm most proud of. Those are free. And I got over 26 courses that I'm working on. So I'm going to add courses every single month. So if you are a veteran, I'd love for you to download. Again, it's free 99. Or if you're a friend or family of a veteran, share that with them. If you will, just drop that in the text and in the friend group, if you will. But it will be available on Android. Google developers take a little bit longer, but it'll be available on Android any day now. But it is live on iTunes. But yeah, Military Transition University, I'm trying to push that app to all 200,000 vets, Daniel, because I want to help them prepare for the economic battlefield and not just the combat battlefield. So again, thank you so much. This is Ritchie Thomas, the Soldier's Coach, and I would tell you guys peace out, but the reality is most of y'all need peace in. Thank you, Daniel.